You're watching Book TV on C-SPAN 2. 48 hours of nonfiction books every weekend. And we are on location in New York City at the annual Book Publishers Convention, Book Expo America it's called. It's held at the Javits Center in New York City, and we're pleased to be joined by two publishers. First, Morgan Entrekin, who is president and publisher of Grove Atlantic, and Jonathan Karp, vice president, executive vice president, and publisher of Simon & Schuster. Gentlemen, thank you for being on Book TV. We appreciate it. Morgan Entrekin, how would you describe the state of the publishing industry today?
Wow, exciting. There's a lot going on. I think that we're going through a big shift as we move to digital. And I think that it poses a lot of opportunities, it poses a lot of questions. There are big new players and forces at work, and I think all of us are trying to figure out, what to do. But the main thing I think that we've all realized is the best thing we can do is to find and publish the best books possible.
So what percentage of revenues come from electronic books right now?
Probably for Grove Atlantic this year, it'll be around 30%.
Do you see that taking 50% at some point?
I think eventually. I mean, one of the things that we've all noticed is that the growth rate has slowed down. And, Grove Atlantic is a mid-sized publisher. We do not publish children's books. We do not publish reference books or travels books. We're in the business of, as I call it, 100,000-word prose narratives. And so in our world, I think that the physical book is probably going to stay around for a good while.
Jonathan Karp, same question.
Well, our CEO also gave that 30% number. So that's a good number, and I'm going to stick to it. I think that there was some research done, some market research done, I think by a guy named Jack McCune, and he found that about 50% of the people surveyed in independent bookstores were buying e-readers. And of that 50% of them said that they still wanted to keep buying hardcover books. That they were in bookstores when they were polled, so you could subtract for that, but still 50% are not buying e-readers and do not intend to. And I've seen that statistic quoted a couple of times, and I don't know whether that number will change as behavior changes, and it probably will. But I do also think that a lot of people are going to keep buying regular hardcover and trade paperback books.
Has the publishing world, in your view, stabilized in the last year or so as opposed to the last 5 years? Seems to be a lot more turmoil in the last 5 years.
I didn't feel that much turmoil personally because I wake up every morning thinking about what the book should be. And that hasn't changed. And a lot of this coverage of digital publishing, it's true, it is a transformative technology, but it hasn't radically changed the content very much, nor has it changed what makes a book great. So I still wake up in the morning thinking about the same thing. How can you make the book better? Who should be writing the book? How do we make people aware of the book? So it hasn't felt like as tumultuous a time to me as it may feel to the people covering it.
Mr. Entrekin.
What I'm trying to do is just watch everything that's going on and make smart decisions. But I agree with John that I think there are a couple of things that we have to recognize with the move to digital in books as a form. One, it is a qualitatively different experience to read a book on an e-reader versus to read a paper book. And that's not true of music. Music, it sounds the same either way. I think the other thing is that we have to realize that book readers range in age from 2 days old to 110 years old. And so particularly over 40 or over 50, I think they're going to be slower to adapt and slower to move purely to digital. So, and in terms of the turmoil, I think that what most of us we're just a little unsure about what and how is going to be the shape of the channels of distribution. What role are the big players going to play? Are they going to continue to play? Are we going to be able to keep a significant number of bricks and mortar stores? That's a question confronting all of us.
Recently in the New York Times, there was an article about how the publishers have done e-commerce or e-books differently and better than the music publishers from a previous era. Are you satisfied with the approach that publishers have taken with e-books?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I guess I'm satisfied. I mean, right now, it's a fairly significant windfall in income for publishers. If you look at the companies that have to report their results publicly because they're publicly traded, almost all of them are showing pretty robust profits over the last 24 months. So, you know, I think that we came later to digital than magazines or newspaper or music. I think that unlike magazines or newspaper, we don't have a subscription or advertiser base, so that protected us some. We figured out how to get paid. Piracy is not a significant problem for us yet. You know, and again, it's a 17, 18-year-old kid is going to downloading music, and that's a different customer than a 45 or 55-year-old person buying a hardcover book. I've never stolen any music. You know, I pay for what I download, and I think that that's something that we need to recognize. You know, that we're going to have a different experience.
But just to pick up on that, Jonathan Karp, there's a generation now that expects music to be free, movies to be free. As a publisher, are you seeing that people expect their books to be free as well?
I haven't perceived that, and I agree with what Morgan's saying. I think that the clientele of the typical book, I mean, there's sort of a conventional wisdom in the publishing industry that it's hard to sell to teenagers or to people in their 20s. I mean, obviously there's a boom right now in young adult, but I think parents are buying a lot of those books for kids. And so I'm not sure that that books have been as vulnerable as music and film has been. I mean, I know that, you know, I go on to YouTube all the time when I want to hear a song, and I don't pay for it. But I'm still buying books. So just as from my own personal experience, I don't see it.
Why the boon in YA books?
Well, I think one reason is that they're online, and so the social media is communicating excitement about those books so fast. They have more time, so when they hear about something that's interesting, I think they all do flock to it faster. I think that it's easier to communicate enthusiastic word of mouth for young adult works. Now, this phenomenon of adult readers buying young adult books, like the Hunger Games or Harry Potter or Twilight, I haven't been able to figure out that, except that I guess readers are hooked and it doesn't really matter. And maybe also the line between what young adult is and what is allegedly adult is not as pronounced as it used to be.
Are you publishing any of those books?
We're not, so I can't really speak with a lot of authority. I do know the publisher of Twilight, and there's a famous story that she tells about being on an airplane and reading it and getting off the plane and knowing that she had to buy that book, she had to acquire it. So I think she responded to Twilight just the way any reader would.
Mr. Entrekin, what about the use of social media, particularly when it comes to PR and marketing of a book?
Well, I'm 57 years old and I don't tweet, and so I rely on the young people in my office to do it. I think that you know, it's one of the things I'm trying to educate myself and educate my staff about, is that I think that what the internet has offered us is a way to narrowcast that we've never been able to do, and a way to, in a cost-effective manner, potentially reach the audience that might be interested in the book, which has always been one of the biggest challenges for a book publisher. And you know, I know that you've had our author Carl Melantes on a couple of times, and that when we had Matterhorn, his first novel, we really made great use. In fact, Joe Ferrari Adler, who now works with Jonathan at Simon & Schuster, he was the editor who worked with me on the book, and we could go and target the potential Vietnam veterans or people interested in that issue. The same with What It's Like to Go to War, his book on combat experience and how our society needs to you know, direct more attention to preparing young men and women to go off to combat. You know, we're able to identify and communicate with potential audience for that book in a way that we never have been able to. And as far as the social media, I'm not certain, you know, how to use it most effectively. We try a lot of different things. It helps particularly if the author is very engaged. That's what I think, that the author has more opportunity to control his or her own fate than ever before by being very active on social media.
I agree with that. I mean, we're publishing Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, Total Recall, this fall. And Arnold actually asked people on his Facebook page, he has about 2 million followers. He just said, what would you like me to write about? And then he said, submit photos if you think there are photos that you'd like to see in the book. And you know, hundreds, thousands of people actually responded. So that's one way you can communicate. We have other authors who just connect very easily through social media. A lot of novelists do it really well. They're online a lot. Sometimes it keeps them from writing their books because they're